Dear students, in this lecture, we are going to cover the history of the second dynasty of Delhi Sultanate, which is Khilji dynasty. So let's begin. So the history of Khilji dynasty begins with a person known as Jalaluddin Firoz Shah Khalji, also known as Khilji. So Khalji and Khilji, they are basically the same variations of spelling. So who was Jalaluddin Khilji? So we will understand what was Khilji dynasty with the help of the life of this person, because it is this person who has established the dynasty known as Khilji dynasty. So Jalaluddin Khilji was a capable commander and held highest military positions in the reign of Sultan Kekubabad. So Kekubad was the second last ruler of slave dynasty. So what is this slave dynasty? Slave dynasty is the first dynasty of Delhi Sultanate. Delhi Sultanate is the time period of Indian history from 1206 to 1526. So during this period of 320 years, 5 dynasties had come on the throne of Delhi. So first was slave dynasty. So this guy Jalaluddin Firoz was a military general during the last days of slave dynasty. So he was working under the second last king of slave dynasty, whose name was Kekubad. Besides being a military general, he was also the leader of the Khalji clan, also known as Khilji, and non-Turkish nobles at the court, because Delhi Sultanate was established by people of Turkish origins. But once Delhi Sultanate was established, many other Islamic countries or people from other Islamic countries also moved to India. They were not all Turkish. So majority of the noblemen were Turkish, but there were some non-Turkish nobles as well. So this guy Jalaluddin Khilji was the leader of non-Turkish nobles. Jalaluddin defeated the Turkish nobles in the tussle for power, because there were two groups. One was of people of Turkish origin, the other was people who were non-Turkish, had come from some other country. So this guy Jalaluddin defeated the Turkish people. Defeating Turkish people means slave dynasty was totally Turkish. Jalaluddin reduced the position of Emperor Kekubad to a mere puppet, because he was the military general. He had the full power in his hand, whereas the king was a useless king. He was a drunkard. He was a pleasure addict. After 3 years of ruling through a puppet emperor, he finally murdered Kekubad and made his 3-year-old son Kayumars as the next emperor. So 3-year-old son, think how wicked he was. He wanted to keep the power with him. So that's why after killing the king, he made his 3-year-old son as the next emperor so that he can control the throne. But he got too greedy, and just 3 months after killing Kekubad, he killed his emperor's son as well by throwing the child emperor in Yamuna river. So this small child whom he had made emperor, so he got so greedy that after 3 months he threw this child into the river Yamuna, and that way slave dynasty was ended. He thus brought an end to the Mamluk dynasty. What is Mamluk? Mamluk is the Turkish word for slave. Islamic Turkish word for slave. So Mamluk dynasty means slave dynasty. So he thus brought an end to the slave dynasty in 1290 and started the next dynasty of Khiljis. Because his title was Khilji, so the dynasty that he has just now started came to be known as Khilji dynasty. Thus, Khilji dynasty became the second dynasty to take over Delhi Sultanate. I already told you that Delhi Sultanate, history of Delhi Sultanate saw 5 different dynasties. First was slave, and now this person formed the second dynasty, which is Khilji dynasty. So he is the founder of the second dynasty of Delhi Sultanate. How did he ascend to the throne? How did he reach the throne? So Jalaluddin ascended the throne of Delhi Sultanate in 1219 AD. I already told you he killed Kekubad and threw his child into Yamuna river. So Jalaluddin Firoz Khilji was 70 years old and he was utterly unpopular. He was very unpopular. Jalaluddin avoided making any radical changes to the administrative setup. Why? Because he was unpopular. He thought that if I will try to make some changes, the nobles will revolt. Making changes means what? You are replacing somebody from his position. So if you replace somebody from his position, will he be happy? He won't be. So that's why he avoided making any radical changes to the administrative setup and retained the old Turkic novels. He himself was non-Turkic. So just to keep them happy, keep the Turkic nobles happy, he did not make any severe changes, massive changes. His biggest mistake was that he allowed ex-emperor Balban's nephew Malik Chhajju to continue as the governor of Manikpur Kara. So this Manikpur Kara is was a small territory, or you can say small Jagirdari or small Ikta in terms of terminology of Delhi Sultanate. This was a Ikta. Ikta means a small piece of territory assigned to a nobleman. So this Malik Chhajju was also allowed to continue as the governor. Who was Malik Chhajju? Malik Chhajju was the relative of ex-emperor Balban. Who was Balban? Balban was the strongest ruler of slave dynasty. The first dynasty. There were 5 dynasties. So first dynasty, he was the strongest ruler. So this Malik Chhajju was his nephew. Now, why was this a mistake? It is said here, his biggest mistake. So why was this a mistake? Because Malik Chhajju revolted against the emperor, newly made emperor Jalaluddin Khilji. When Jalaluddin Khilji murdered Kekubad and then Kayumar, the surviving members of the Balban's family took shelter at Malik Chhajju's place. Why? Because he was the governor, and also their relative Bughra Khan, who was Balban's own son, showed no interest in helping his family members. So Bughra Khan was the governor of Bengal. He was very afraid of involving himself into the politics of Delhi Sultanate. So that's why he kept away. New Sultan Jalaluddin allowed Chhajju to continue on his post of the governor of Kara Manikpur, which was, in today's term, it is modern Allahabad. Chhajju soon assembled a small army of Turkish loyalists. So still Turkish and non-Turkish battle is going on. So this Chhajju Malik, he gathered the Turkish nobles and marched towards Delhi. Arkali Khan, who was the eldest son of Jalaluddin, defeated him near Badaयूं, arrested him and presented him before the Sultan. But you will see this Jalaluddin Khilji, he was a very lenient man. He used to forgive everybody. He was of the belief that he used to say that I, being a Muslim, cannot punish any other Muslim. So the king treated him well and he was soon released. Now Jalaluddin's policy of pardoning, he was very famous for pardoning, giving pardon, forgiving. Why he was known as king of pardons? Because he was generous to everybody. A few examples of his generosity are recorded in history. The first is, he showed generosity to the thugs and robbers. So when Jalaluddin had come to throne, so that time Delhi was still developing. That means the boundary of the Delhi was covered by forests. So that means if you have to come to Delhi, you have to cross a forest. So in those forests, thugs and robbers used to live. So this guy Jalaluddin, he caught all these robbers. He ordered his enemies that you should go and catch all the thugs and robbers operating around Delhi, and bring him before me. So when his armies caught the thugs and robbers, they were taken to king's court, but the king let them off with a mild warning and sent them to far off places including Bengal. That means instead of killing or punishing the thugs and robbers, he told them, get lost, get out of Delhi Sultanate. You can go to Bengal. Go to Bengal and continue your whatever you want to do. The next example of his generosity is the generosity he has shown to rebellious nobles. So in his initial years as Sultan, Jalaluddin faced many rebellions, but whenever an erring nobles means whosoever committed a mistake, erring noble was caught and brought before him, he almost always forgive them. So that's why he is known as King of Pardons. He used to say that those nobles were revolting against him because they were loyal to Balban. So he said that, you know why these nobles are revolting against me? Because even if they are revolting, it shows a good positive point about their character, that they are loyal to an emperor who is already dead. That means, so it is not appropriate to punish a Muslim who was loyal to his master even after his death. Balban was already dead, and even then some nobles were showing loyalty towards Balban. So that's why he said that, why should I punish these good people? Because they are loyal to Balban. The next example of his generosity is the generosity to Mongol invaders. So Mongols have started, attacking or coming within the territories of Delhi Sultanate during the times of Jalaluddin. Because before that, Iltutmish and Balban, they managed to fight back the Mongols. It is very interesting to note that the word Mughal is actually a derivative of the word Mongol, Mughal. So all the word roots are same. So that is how the history of India is shaped. So the Mongols launched a large scale attack on India during the reign of Jalaluddin. Sultan himself went to fight against them in Punjab and defeated them, because these Mongols, they used to enter Delhi Sultanate via Punjab. So this is Kashmir, this is Punjab. So they cannot simply land in Delhi, they have to cross. So the first attack that they used to do was on Punjab. So Sultan Jalaluddin fought the Mongols in Punjab and defeated them. He also captured a lot of Mongols, but they were pardoned and some of them were allowed to settle near Delhi. He captured many Mongols in Punjab. He brought them to Delhi, but instead of killing or imprisoning them, he pardoned them that go and return back to your country. Some Mongols decided to settle in India, and hence they were allowed to settle near Delhi. They were forgiven. So these Mongols who decided to settle in and around Delhi Sultanate came to be known as Neo-Muslims. 2 times this question have been asked, what is meant by the term Neo-Muslims? So Neo-Muslims were basically, they were already Muslims. It's not that they converted to Islam, but they were new Muslims. That means new people who had just come to Delhi Sultanate. Hence they were known as new kind of Muslims. See, so far I have shown you the examples of how lenient Jalaluddin Khilji was. But in his entire career, there is one exception. There is one exceptional case that is mentioned in history, and this is often asked in question papers. So he got one Siddhi Maula executed. Executed means imprisoned and killed. Why? Siddhi Maula was a foreign born religious leader. He belonged to the Dervish sect. Siddhi Maula had settled in Delhi during Kekubad's reign. Who was Kekubad? He was the second last ruler of slave dynasty. Slave dynasty, and Jalaluddin Khilji had worked under him. So Siddhi Maula had settled in Delhi during Kekubad's reign and had gained immense popularity. So this guy, he was a religious teacher. Many of the Jalaluddin's detractors began to take shelter in Siddhi Maula's Khanka. Khanka means mosque. So those people who did not like Jalaluddin, they used to gather in his mosque or in his court. So he made them his disciples. So Jalaluddin did not like this. He thought that those people who are against me, how can this Siddhi Maula make them his own disciples? That means he is conspiring against me. He is provoking people to, revolt against me. So this way, Siddhi Maula came in conflict with Jalaluddin Khilji. So Sultan got the news that Siddhi Maula was planning a rebellion against him. So Sultan, who was in general known to be very lenient, lost his temper this time. So generally he used to forgive each and every person who used to conspire or plot against him. But this time he lost his temper. He got Siddhi Maula trampled under the feet of the elephant. So this is the only case in his life history where instead of pardoning, he actually executed his enemy. So this perhaps was the only case where the Sultan acted so sternly. See, before becoming Sultan, he had killed Kekubad, he had killed his son also. But after becoming Sultan, he had tried to become a good person. But this execution of Siddhi Maula came as a surprise to the people of Delhi Sultanate. So everybody was now scared of Jalaluddin Khilji. The next important political event of his career was campaign against Ranthambore, Rajasthan. So that took place in 1291 AD. So this guy Jalaluddin Khilji became emperor in 1290 AD. Immediately 1 year after that, he attacked Ranthambore. This is the fort of Ranthambore. So King Hamir Dev of Ranthambore was the owner of a massive fort. You can see in this picture, this is the fort, and was a threat to Delhi Sultanate. Now why are these forts a threat? Because you can hide a large army. Your army can stay within the fort, and from the top of the fort you can attack anybody who is trying to come up. That means it is very difficult to defeat somebody who is hiding within the walls of the fort. So that's why forts were a very good defensive mechanism. So King Hamir Dev of Ranthambore was the owner of this fort, and because this fort was considered to be a threat to Delhi Sultanate, Jalaluddin himself attacked the fort in 1291, but even after months he could not breach the fort. So he came to Ranthambore himself. He tried to capture the fort, but he could not succeed. He tried for months but could not succeed. In return, Hamir Dev inflicted a severe damage by killing hundreds of Khilji soldiers. Jalaluddin Khilji could not even enter the gates of the fort, but his soldiers were getting killed because from within the fort there was firing was done, arrows were thrown, guns were fired. So that way Khilji was losing soldiers. Hamir Dev was safe. So humiliated, Jalaluddin returned to Delhi. He could not win Ranthambore. To console his army, he proclaimed that he did not think the fort was worth the hair of even one Musalman. So though in reality he was defeated, but just to save his face, he came up with an excuse. He started telling his army that it's a waste of time trying to capture this fort, because this fort is worthless. It's not even worth the hair of a single of my soldiers. So that way he ordered his soldiers to retreat. Now the next major political event of his life is the, Jalaluddin's own ambitious nephew Alauddin had a great influence on his life. How? Alauddin Khilji was Jalaluddin's nephew. That means Alauddin Khilji was his elder brother's son. Alauddin married Jalaluddin's daughter Malika Jahan long before the Khilji revolution of 1290. That means this was the case of uncle and nephew. Alauddin was the nephew, Jalaluddin was his uncle, and Jalaluddin had also married his daughter to Alauddin. And all these has happened before the Khilji revolution of 1290. That means even before Jalaluddin had become the emperor. In 1291, that means after Jalaluddin became the emperor, Alauddin played an important role in crushing a revolt by the governor of Kara, whose name was Malik Chhajju. We have already seen this. So two bold expeditions that in fact after this, after Alauddin helped to defeat Malik Chhajju, the uncle Jalaluddin gave his nephew, who was also his son-in-law, he said that instead of Malik Chhajju, from today onwards you are the new governor of Kara Manikpur. So apart from this, the nephew Alauddin took two bold expeditions, and see, he could take these expeditions because he was not only nephew of the emperor, but he was also his son-in-law, and that way emperor had given much power and decision-making powers to Alauddin. So he used to take permissions from the uncle and he used to go and attack kingdoms. So that was the strategy of the uncle and nephew. So Alauddin Khilji did two expeditions when his uncle was the emperor. So let's see those two expeditions. So first expedition was to Bhilsa, undertaken after seeking permission of the Sultan. So Bhilsa was basically located in modern day Madhya Pradesh, Malwa region. In 1292 AD, Alauddin had attacked Bhilsa and a part of the loot was sent to Sultan. As a reward, Alauddin got the governorship of Awadh in addition to that of Kara Manikpur. So whenever he used to go to attack, he used to take permission of his uncle. So the first time he did that was by attacking Bhilsa, and before attacking Bhilsa, he had taken proper permission. So he looted Bhilsa and sent all the loot and wealth in the treasury of his uncle. That means he deposited everything in king's treasury. The second expedition was to Devagiri. Devagiri is a place, you can say, in present day Telangana, Andhra Pradesh region. So the second expedition was to Devagiri, and this he did not take permission of his uncle. This time he had some other plans. So instead of taking permission from his uncle, he straight away went to Devagiri. Why? Because he wanted to loot he had heard that Devagiri has large amount of wealth, weapon and horses. So he thought that let me go to Devagiri, let me loot enormous amount of wealth. So from that wealth, I will create my own army. That means I am not going to submit this wealth to my uncle's treasury. Instead, I will use this money to make my own army. And who knows, one day I will be able to become the emperor. So to become the emperor, money is needed. So to get that money, he attacked Devagiri. So it was his secret plan. That's why he did not take permission from his uncle this time. The enormous booty means loot, that Alauddin got from Devagiri helped him become the Sultan of Delhi. We will see how with the help of this money he actually became the Sultan. Jalaluddin was later murdered by a planned action by Alauddin in 1296 AD. So same year, see, he looted Devgiri in 1296. Just 2 months after that, he managed to become the Sultan. He had cleared his way. He has murdered his uncle Jalaluddin. How did he manage to murder his uncle? Let us see. So now let us see the case of assassination of Jalaluddin. Emperor Jalaluddin was waiting in Gwalior, thinking that after winning Devgiri, Alauddin would come to him and explain why he did not take permission before attacking Devgiri. But Alauddin had already made his mind to get rid of old emperor. So that's why his main purpose of attacking Devgiri was that he had already made up his mind that I am going to murder Jalaluddin. I myself am going to become the next Sultan. So by then he had already made up his mind to get rid of old emperor. He went straight to Kara Manikpur. Why did he go straight to Kara Manikpur? Because he was the governor of Kara Manikpur. So all his loyal and all his capable soldiers. So he had no threat in Kara Manikpur. Nobody can defeat him in Kara Manikpur. So he went straight away to Kara Manikpur because it was his den. You can say he was the lion of Kara Manikpur, but outside Kara Manikpur he could have been killed. From Kara he wrote to the emperor seeking his pardon. That means once he reached his stronghold, he sent message to Jalaluddin, his uncle. He said, I am really sorry, I did not take your permission, but I am really sorry. I am ready to submit all the money and wealth I have looted in your treasury. So he started playing games, mind games with his uncle. So he told his uncle that if you will not forgive me, I will commit suicide. So that was you can say, emotional tactics. So Jalaluddin was not only the emperor, but he was also the father-in-law of Alauddin, because Alauddin was married to his daughter. So Alauddin was also emperor's son-in-law, and this threat worked. So Jalaluddin could not see that his daughter Malika Jahan would become a widow. So that's why he thought that let's forgive this child, because he was his child, he was his nephew. Sultan Jalaluddin sent a message that he himself would come and meet Alauddin, because Alauddin was in Kara Manikpur. Alauddin's brother told Sultan that he should go alone without his soldiers, as Alauddin might get scared and commit suicide. So Alauddin and his brother both were playing mind games with Jalaluddin. So when Jalaluddin reached Kara Manikpur, so his brother told him that Alauddin is sitting in his tent, but please do not go with your bodyguards, because if he will see your bodyguards, he will think that you have come to kill him, and that way Alauddin might commit suicide. So again Jalaluddin was, his heart melted. He thought that, oh, so Ghalibal Sultan's heart melted upon hearing this, and he went alone in his nephew's tent to console him. So this trick worked. Jalaluddin fell for the trick. Alauddin, as per his plan, the Sultan was treacherously attacked and beheaded. So once he came face to face with Alauddin, so he was alone in Alauddin's tent. So the moment he entered Alauddin's tent, Alauddin beheaded him, cut his head off. So this happened on July 20th, 1296 AD. Dates are not important, year is. And the same day, Alauddin declared himself the Sultan. So he killed his own uncle and declared himself as the next Sultan of Delhi Sultanate. Now let us study in detail about this guy Alauddin Khilji. So he got to rule Delhi Sultanate for 20 years. He is known to be the strongest ruler of Delhi Sultanate, strongest beyond any doubt, of entire Delhi Sultanate. Delhi Sultanate existed for 320 years. And in these 320 years, more than 50 rulers came on the throne. So out of all those 50-60 rulers, this guy Alauddin Khilji is the strongest. Why and how we will see. So first things first, who was Alauddin Khilji? He was known by his name Ali Gurashp. So before becoming the emperor or before coming into the service of Jalaluddin Khilji, Alauddin Khilji was known by his childhood name. His childhood name was Ali Gurshap. So till he became Sultan, he was known by this name only. He was called Ali. People used to call him Ali. So Alauddin Khilji was the nephew and son-in-law of Jalaluddin Khilji, as we have already seen. So when Jalaluddin became Sultan, he made Alauddin the governor of Kara and Manikpur. Kara and Manikpur, basically the area in and around Allahabad. Jalaluddin was impressed by his military talent and gave his daughter in marriage to him, and that's why he was also the son-in-law of Jalaluddin. That is why. Alauddin was very ambitious and wanted to become Sultan. So, military campaign before becoming Sultan, we have already discussed. He attacked Bhilsa in 1292 AD. So Alauddin Khilji undertook a few military campaigns when he was just the governor of Kara Manikpur. He decided to target Bhilsa, a wealthy city in the Parmar Rajput kingdom. So all these were Rajput kingdoms of Malwa. Malwa means region of Indore, Gwalior to Indore, that region, Madhya Pradesh. In late 1292 AD, Alauddin Khilji obtained the Sultan's permission to raid Bhilsa. So initially he used to take permission for everything from his uncle. He damaged a number of temples and plundered a large amount of wealth from Bhilsa. Alauddin sent the loot to the royal treasury of Jalaluddin Khilji, we have already discussed them, to gain his confidence. The second attack that he did when he was not a sultan was the attack on Devgiri, we have already discussed. At Bhilsa, he had come to know of a very rich Yadav kingdom of Deccan area. Deccan means South India, which was known as Devgiri. He concealed the intention of attacking Devgiri from Sultan Jalaluddin and started making preparation. That means this time he did not discuss this with Sultan Jalaluddin that he is going to attack, because he wanted to plunder the wealth there, we have already seen, and he wanted to use that wealth to plot against Jalaluddin. Then how could he discuss that with his uncle? So his aim was to accumulate wealth so that he can engineer a coup. Coup means revolt against Jalaluddin. So after looting Devgiri, he totally ignored Sultan Jalaluddin and went straight to his stronghold of Kara. And what happened in Kara, you already know. He assassinated his uncle. Now what are the other political events of Alauddin's life? Alauddin dreamt of becoming the second Alexander. So you have to remember this. Who is known as the second Alexander of India? It is actually Alauddin Khilji. Alauddin Khilji had ambitions of world conquest like Alexander. He used to call himself Alexander. He wanted to become the second Alexander, and the title Sikandar. Sikandar is the you can say Hindi or Persian word for Alexander. Alexander Sikandar. So he used to call himself Sikandar-e-Sani. Was mentioned on coins and public prayers. So which ruler of Delhi Sultanate used to call himself second Alexander? It is Alauddin Khilji. Khilji's Sultan declared himself as the Shariat. That means he has gone so mad, he thought himself to be so powerful that he declared himself as the prophet. No other Muslim would have dared to do that. So how can you declare yourself to be the prophet? So that Alauddin Khilji did. Alauddin Khilji declared himself to be the prophet and the highest religious leader of entire Delhi Sultanate. Nobody was above him in making religious decisions as well. Now let's see Alauddin Khilji's military campaign once he became the emperor. So he became the first thing was annexation of Gujarat. So Alauddin sent an expedition to Gujarat in 1197. The Sultanate army destroyed and looted Anhilwada, Somnath temple and Kembe. So this was happening even before he had become the Sultan. So Khilji's army general brought a handsome Hindu slave boy for 1000 dinars. So please remember, this time he had not even become a sultan, nor did his uncle was the sultan. They were simply working under slave dynasty. So at that time he had went to annex Gujarat, and a very important thing happened there. So Khilji's army general brought a handsome Hindu slave boy for 1000 dinars, because that time buying and purchasing of slaves were common. So his army bought a very good looking Hindu slave boy for 1000 dinars, converted him to Islam and named him Malik Kafur Hazar Dinari, Hazar, because he was bought for 1000 dinars. So they brought and gifted this slave to Alauddin Khilji. Now Malik Kafur soon became the most trusted military general of Alauddin, and possibly his love interest too, because some historians believe that Malik Kafur and Alauddin Khilji, they were love partners. They used to love each other. Love as in they were in gay relationship. Some historians believe. The next was invasion of Ranthambore. So that took place in 1301. I think this is 1297. This should be 12. Obviously, this is 1297. Because Delhi Sultanate itself started in 1206. So how is it possible? So anyways, the second was invasion of Ranthambore. So Jalaluddin Khilji had also tried to attack Ranthambore, but he could not win. Now his nephew Alauddin Khilji again attacks Ranthambore. After few unsuccessful attempts and after losing many soldiers, Alauddin himself went to Ranthambore in 1301. Rana Hamir Dev was betrayed by his prime minister and was ultimately killed, with all females committing Johar. So this time Rana Hamir Dev was defeated. Earlier he managed to defend Ranthambore, but this time Alauddin himself went to Ranthambore, and now Rana Hamir Dev was killed, and all the female members who lived inside the fort of Ranthambore, they committed suicide, committed Johar by jumping into the fire. The most important invasion of Alauddin Khilji's life was perhaps the invasion of Chittor, Rajasthan in 1303. So Alauddin attacked Chittor in January 303 AD and besieged the fort. So all these were basically forts. Raja Ratan Singh, remember this name, Raja Ratan Singh defended the fort for 7 months, but the fort was ultimately captured by Alauddin. Raja Ratan Singh was killed and his wife Rani Padmini and other females committed Johar. So many movies and many television serials have been made on this story, that Alauddin Khilji wanted to marry Rani Padmini. So some historians believe that he fell in love with Rani Padmini, but Rani Padmini did not like Alauddin Khilji at all. So that's why he invaded Chittor. He thought that let me kill the king and then I will kidnap the queen, or I will force the queen to marry me. That's why he had attacked Chittor. But how true it is, historians are still debating this. Alauddin Khilji's obsession with the beauty of Rani Padmini is probably a fictional tale. So majority of the historians believe that it is just a fiction. That means there is nobody known as Rani Padmini who existed. The basis of this story is Padmavat. Please remember this. How did this story become famous? Story of Alauddin and Rani Padmini. The basis of this story is Padmavat, written by Malik Muhammad Jaisi in 1540 AD. Jaisi was the court poet of Sher Shah Suri. So this story was written much later, 225 years later, and the book name is Padmavat. In this book it is written that Alauddin Khilji fell in love with Rani Padmini. But how true it is, we don't know. So historians think that it is just a story. The other major political event of Alauddin Khilji's life was invasion of South India. So as I already told you that Alauddin Khilji had went to Devgiri, here is Devgiri. So he was aware that South India has enormous amount of wealth. So around 308, Alauddin sent Malik Kafur. Who is Malik Kafur? He is the slave who was bought in Gujarat and was gifted to Alauddin Khilji. So he sent Malik Kafur to invade Devagiri again. Why word again? Because he had already attacked Devgiri once in 1192 AD. 1196 AD. Because, and this time why again he wanted to attack Devgiri? Because King Ramchandra of Devgiri had discontinued the tribute payments promised in 1296 AD. The last time he attacked Devgiri was in 1296 AD. So during that time it was decided that the king would send regular gifts, annual gifts and tax to Delhi Sultanate. But King Ramchandra had stopped doing that, and that's why he thought that let's attack Devgiri again, let's teach them a lesson. Malik Kafur achieved an easy victory and Ramchandra agreed to become a lifelong vassal of Alauddin. With Ramchandra's help, Malik Kafur captured Warangal. So Warangal, all these cities, they were nearby cities of Devgiri. So all you can see this route of Malik Kafur. So Kakatiya king of Warangal surrendered huge wealth. Please remember this. And Kohinoor diamond before Malik Kafur. So this is where the story of Kohinoor diamond becomes. So first time Kohinoor diamond travels from South India to North India. So Kohinoor diamond was gifted to Malik Kafur by Kakatiya king of Warangal. Malik Kafur plundered, that means looted various kingdoms of the south. You can see this route that he took. He looted Madurai, Dwar, Samudra. So all these cities were looted by Malik Kafur. Why was he looting? Because he wanted to collect wealth from South India and take it back and give it to his master, who was Alauddin Khilji. The one thing for which we should thank Alauddin Khilji is successful defense against Mongols. Mongols wanted to capture and loot India. They have understood that it is very easy to invade India. If Turkish people can do that, if Muhammad Ghori can do that, Qutbuddin Aibak can do that, then why can't Mongols can do that? So they were trying very hard again and again to enter and invade India. So Alauddin had to face a series of Mongol invasions during his tenure. You don't have to remember all these dates. He repulsed the Mongol attacks for more than a dozen times. So question is asked, who faced Mongol attack regularly or most frequently? It is Alauddin Khilji. But the good thing is that never in a head-to-head battle did Mongols manage to defeat Khilji. That means Khilji always won against Mongols. He did not allow Mongol to loot even an inch of Indian territory. In 1303 AD, when Alauddin Khilji was busy in Chittor, Rani Padmini, Raja Ratan Singh. So he was busy fighting in Chittor. So in his absence, Mongols managed to enter India and indulged in looting and massacre. So but before Mongols could reach Delhi, Alauddin managed to reach Delhi and took shelter in Siri Fort. Siri Fort is located in Delhi, which was still under construction. Today it is known as Siri Fort. That time it was not known as Siri Fort. Why it is known as Siri Fort? We will see. Mongols could not breach the fort and returned back after 3 months. That means Alauddin Khilji stayed inside Siri Fort continuously for 3 months. In 1305, Khilji forces defeated Mongols at Amroha. So as I already told you, again and again Mongols were attacking. So once they got defeated, then again after 3-4 months they used to come. So this time in 305, Khilji defeated Mongols at Amroha, which is a place in Uttar Pradesh, and 8,000 Mongols were killed. Their skull was used to construct Siri Fort. So this fort was now known as Siri Fort. Why? Because skull, sar in Hindi, skulls is known as sar. That's why Siri Fort, a fort made of skulls. So it will be easy for you to remember that who constructed Siri Fort. Alauddin Khilji constructed Siri Fort. Now what were the administrative reforms of Alauddin Khilji? Alauddin was the emperor, the chief justice and the religious head all in one. He used to call himself Alexander. He used to call himself prophet. That means he was the sole in charge. He was everything. Did not allow anybody else to share power. Unlike previous Delhi sultans, Alauddin did not allow ulemas. Who were ulemas? Muslim religious teachers, to interfere in state affairs. Alauddin established a very systematic and effective spy system to keep a check on his generals and nobles. Alauddin also established a proper postal system for establishing a regular contact with various parts of his empire. That's why he is known as the strongest of all the rulers of Delhi Sultanate. He did so much to make his kingdom strong. He defeated Mongols more than a dozen times. He was never defeated in his entire life. The other important contribution of Alauddin Khilji was his market control system. See, Alauddin had a large army because he wanted to become Alexander. So he maintained a large army, but he did not have enough money to pay salary to these soldiers. So what he did, he thought that let me control the market. After all, soldiers are going to eat food. They need money. So if I don't pay them salary, they will not join my army. So what he did, he told his soldiers that why do you worry? Why do you need salary? I will do such a thing that the rates of the food, grains, milk, everything will become cheap. It will become so cheap that even with less salary, you can enjoy your lives. So Alauddin devised a very efficient market system and fixed the price of various essential commodities. It is said that Alauddin had done so in order to maintain a vast army. I already explained to you. So he did that so that a soldier with very less salary can also buy those commodities and could manage his family affairs peacefully. So he appointed an officer who acted as controller of grain market. He was known as Shahana Mandi. So who introduced the post of Shahana Mandi? Alauddin Khilji. What was the job of this Shahana Mandi? To control the market, to keep an eye on the activities on the market. The merchants of Delhi who wanted to sell those commodities at government fixed price. It was fixed. If it was said that you have to sell milk at 25 paise, you have to sell at 25 paise. You cannot charge a paisa more. So king used to decide the price, not the traders or merchants. So they were required to obtain license from the office of Shahana Mandi, this guy. The merchants had to sell all commodities at fixed rate without any deviation in it. If a merchant sold a commodity underweight, the same amount of flesh was cut off from his body. Black marketing and hoarding of food grains was a serious crime. Now, what were his revenue policies? Alauddin had given utmost importance to increase the state revenue. He wanted to extract money from his citizens and officers because he knew that without wealth, no one could even think of revolting against him. He confiscated all the lands given as grants and gifts. He fixed the land revenue at 50%. He was very greedy. He needed wealth. Nobody in the entire history of India has taken this much tax except Britishers. So he took a 50 percentage, money as land revenue from the total produce, but this was only for Hindus. He gave some leniency, he showed some leniency towards Muslims. In case of Muslim, the land tax was fixed at 1/4, that is half of what Hindus were paying, only 25%. He imposed a 50% kharaj tax. This was an agriculture tax, 50% kharaj tax. So question is asked, who or which emperor took half of the produce as tax? It was this cruel king Alauddin Khilji, because his aim was to make everybody poor, wanted to extract money from his citizens. Alauddin also eliminated the intermediary Hindu rural chiefs and started collecting the kharaj directly from the cultivators. Now, what were his military reforms? So he is known for bringing two great military reforms. One is Dag, the other is Chehra system. We will understand what is Dag and what is Chehra. Alauddin was bent upon building a strong permanent army at the center because he wanted to become Alexander. Previous sultans of Delhi had no permanent standing army. So earlier the sultans used to call their nobles whenever there was a battle or a war. They used to ask their nobles to come to Delhi with their own soldiers, and that way many nobles used to lend their soldiers to the sultan. That way sultan's army used to become large, but there was no permanent army. So Alauddin wanted a permanent army. He appointed an army minister who directly recruited the soldier. You need not remember all this, but as a teacher I will have to make note of this. The soldiers were given good horses and arms were paid in cash. Now coming to these two reforms, Dag and Chehra system. He introduced the practice of recording the descriptive role, that is Hulia or Chehra. You can say it was like an identity card. So he used to record how his soldiers looks. Let's suppose any soldier had black mark on his cheek. So he used to write soldier's name and then black mark on his cheek, so that it acted as the identity card of that soldier. Why did he do so? In order to detect the absentees in the army camp. So there was a roll call of the name of army personals, and whosoever was missing, he was punished. His identity card was there. The another reform, Dag. Now this is Chehra, identity card or Chehra. Now Dag system. Another reform was the branding of horses, or the Dag system, in order to prevent the substitution of bad horses for a good one. So he used to give good quality horses to his soldiers, but he was apprehensive that his soldiers might sell good quality horses in market and replace it with inferior horses. To prevent that, he used to brand the royal horses, or the horses provided by the government were marked, branded. Now what about his religious policy? Alauddin Khilji was a bit intolerant towards Hindus. So he wanted to make them poor. He wanted to dominate Hindus and reduce them to poverty. So the Hindus had to pay several taxes, including jizya. 1/2 of the gross produce of the land was extracted from them. 50%, as I already told you. So this was his religious policy. Art and architecture during Alauddin's reign. So monuments built by Alauddin: tomb of Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia, Alai Darwaja, Alauddin. Alai means made by Alauddin. Alai Minar. So it will be easy for you to remember when it comes in exam. Alai, built by Alauddin. In the early years of 14th century, Alauddin built the Siri fort. Alauddin constructed the Hauj-e-Alai. Alai means Alauddin. This Hauj is today known as Hauj-e-Khas or Hauj Khas. If you will go to Delhi, so there is a very good locality near Qutub Minar that is known as Hauj Khas. So this was basically a water reservoir which was constructed by Alauddin. Now, the other major event of his lifetime is he gave patronage to a very famous poet, Urdu poet Amir Khusro. So Amir Khusro was a Sufi mystic and a disciple of Nizamuddin Aulia. So you see, he respected Nizamuddin Aulia so much. He built a tomb for Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia. So Amir Khusro was the disciple of Nizamuddin Aulia. That's why after the death of Nizamuddin Aulia, he also gave patronage to Amir Khusro. So you have to remember a few things about Amir Khusro. So first thing, he was a disciple of Nizamuddin Aulia and he was a Sufi mystic. The other important thing that you need to know about him is that he is credited with invention of sitar. So who invented sitar? Amir Khusro. Many times this question has been asked. Who is credited with the invention of sitar? It is Amir Khusro. He is also known as father of Qawwali. Amir Khusro. So Khusro is sometimes referred to as parrot of India or Tute-i Hind. So all this you have to remember about Amir Khusro. Now coming to the last days of Alauddin. Alauddin passed his last days in misery and disappointment. His queen Malika-e-Jahan and the eldest son Khijr Khan neglected him. Malika-e-Jahan neglected him. Why? Because he had killed his father. She was the daughter of Jalaluddin Khilji. And his own son Khijr Khan neglected him and engaged themselves in physical pleasure. They used to drink, they used to smoke, but they did not care about declining health of Alauddin. So Alauddin called Malik Kafur back from South India because he has sent Malik Kafur in South India to loot money. So now he calls him back because he thought that I am about to die. So Kafur attempted to capture the throne for himself. He convinced Sultan that Khijr Khan, Malika-e-Jahan, who was Khijr Khan? Alauddin's own son. Who was Malika-e-Jahan? Alauddin's wife. So Malik Kafur convinced him that his son and wife wanted him to die, and he also imprisoned them. So he told them that they are poisoning you, they are trying to kill you, that's why you have fallen sick. So Alauddin told Malik Kafur that you imprison these two people. Finally, Alauddin died in 1316. You need not remember all this. Next day, Malik Kafur buried his body near Jama Masjid. Today, nobody knows where Alauddin Khilji's actual tomb is. Nobody knows. Kafur appointed Alauddin's young son Sihabuddin as a puppet monarch. So he had already imprisoned Khijr Khan. So once Alauddin had died, Malik Kafur appointed his young son Sihabuddin as a puppet monarch and kept the real power with himself. However, Malik Kafur was killed shortly after, and Alauddin's elder son Mubarak Khan seized the power. So who are the successors of Alauddin Khilji? First was Shihabuddin Umar. So how did he become king? Malik Kafur helped him. So following Alauddin Khilji's death, his 6-year-old child prince was placed on the throne by Malik Kafur. But Malik Kafur was immediately killed. Alauddin's another son Mubarak Shah deposed the child prince and became the next emperor. So Mubarak Shah or Mubarak Khan was the next emperor on throne. All these are worthless people. You don't even bother about them. But as part of history, I will have to tell you about them. He soon sank deep into the life of pleasure and addiction to wine and opium. He got extensive power and authority to his gay partner Khusro Khan. So that means this emperor had a partner, love interest. He loved a person known as Khusro Khan. So he is famous for his rivalry with Nizamuddin Aulia. See, Nizamuddin Aulia was very much respected by Alauddin Khilji, but his own son Mubarak Khan did not like Nizamuddin Aulia. Mubarak Khan was ultimately assassinated by his own gay partner Khusro Khan in 1320. What about Khusro Khan? So after assassinating Mubarak Khan, Khusro Khan becomes the next emperor. Khusro was a Hindu convert, that means he was a Hindu who converted to Islam, and he got the whole of Khilji dynasty murdered. So some people of Alauddin Khilji's family were in prison, so he got them all killed so that in future nobody can revolt against him. But he could not retain the throne himself for a long time. His 4-month rule came to an end after Ghazi Malik defeated him in the battle and killed him. So he is killed. Khilji dynasty comes to an end. Ghazi Malik sat on the throne by the name Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq in 1321, thus ending the Khilji dynasty forever and starting the Tughlaq dynasty. So as I already told you, there are 5 dynasties in Delhi Sultanate. First was slave dynasty. Slave dynasty was replaced by Khilji dynasty, and now Khilji dynasty is over. It was replaced by Tughlaq dynasty. Ghazi Malik brought an end, and Ghazi Malik, when became emperor, he kept his name as Ghiyasuddin. Since his title was Tughlaq, so the next dynasty is known as Tughlaq dynasty.